Ladies and gentlemen, listen to me closely. The world is full of distractions, full of illusions, full of places that promise to lead you to the truth, but instead lead you further into darkness. And what's the most dangerous thing about deception? It doesn't come dressed as a lie. It doesn't announce itself as a trap. No, it comes wrapped in something familiar, something comfortable, something that feels like home. There are places where people gather seeking truth, seeking salvation, seeking purpose, and instead they are fed poison disguised as wisdom. The words sound right, the music moves you, the messages seem powerful, but deep inside something is missing. The spirit is absent, the purpose is lost. It's not about growth anymore. It's about control. It's not about sacrifice, it's about profit. It's not about love, it's about manipulation. Too many are walking into buildings thinking they are walking into the arms of God, but instead they are walking into the hands of men who have traded truth for influence, traded wisdom for wealth, traded service for self-gain. And the worst part, people don't even see it happening. They trust blindly, they follow without question, and before they know it, they have given their time, their energy, their souls, only to realize they were chasing a mirage. But listen, I'm not here to tell you to walk away from your faith. No, I'm here to tell you to open your eyes, to think, to question, to seek truth for yourself, because the truth is not hidden inside four walls. It's not locked inside a building. It's not controlled by any man. The truth is alive. The truth is free. The truth is something that transforms you from the inside out, not something that enslaves you with fear. You don't need a stage. You don't need a performance. You don't need to be entertained. You need to be changed. And if where you are isn't changing you, if it's not making you stronger, wiser, bolder, then maybe it's time to walk away. Maybe it's time to stop being comfortable in deception and start being uncomfortable in truth, because the truth will challenge you. The truth will stretch you. The truth will demand more from you. But the truth will also set you free. So don't just listen to words, watch the actions. Don't just feel the energy, see the results. And don't just follow because it's what you've always done. Follow because you know it's right. Because at the end of the day, when all is said and done, the only thing that will matter is whether you chose to live in truth or die in deception. Choose wisely. Listen to me. The most dangerous thing about deception is that it never comes looking like deception. It doesn't walk up to you and say, hey, I'm here to lead you astray. No, it comes wrapped in something that looks good, feels good, and sounds good. It comes dressed in the right words, the right music, the right emotions. It comes in a form so familiar that you don't even question it. And that's why thousands, even millions are being led down a path they don't even realize is the wrong one. You see, the enemy isn't going to come to you in a way that makes you run in the other direction. He's going to come in a way that makes you stay. He's going to make you feel comfortable, make you feel entertained, make you feel like you belong. But let me ask you something. Does feeling good mean you're growing? Does being comfortable mean you're being transformed? Because if where you are is only making you feel something but never pushing you to become something, then maybe, just maybe, you're in the wrong place. People are walking into buildings thinking they are stepping into the presence of God, but in reality, they are stepping into the presence of men who have learned how to play the game. They know exactly what to say, exactly how to move, exactly how to keep you coming back. It's not about leading you to the truth. It's about keeping you dependent. It's not about setting you free. It's about keeping you in their control. But listen, and I'm not saying every place is like this. I'm saying you have to open your eyes. You have to be aware, because deception is not obvious. It's subtle. It's slow. It makes you believe you are in the right place while quietly leading you further away from the truth. And if you're not careful, if you don't take the time to think for yourself, to seek for yourself, to question what you've been told, then one day you'll wake up and realize you've spent years chasing an illusion. I need you to hear me. Just because something looks right doesn't mean it is right. Just because it moves your emotions doesn't mean it moves your soul. And just because it sounds like the truth doesn't mean it is the truth. The only way to avoid deception is to seek truth for yourself. Stop relying on what someone else tells you. Stop depending on someone else's interpretation. Stop following just because it's familiar. Challenge yourself. Question everything. And never settle for something just because it's comfortable. Because deception thrives in comfort. But truth will shake you, wake you, and set you free. Listen to me. There's a difference between being led and being controlled. There's a difference between being guided and being manipulated. And too many people can't tell the difference. Too many people walk into places that claim to be about faith, about truth, about salvation, but in reality, they're about power, about influence, about control. They're not trying to set you free. They're trying to keep you locked in. It's not about leading you to God. It's about leading you to them. It's not about strengthening your faith. It's about strengthening their grip on you. And the worst part, they make it feel like love. They make it feel like protection. They make it feel like they're doing it for you. But real love doesn't chain you to fear. Real truth doesn't require manipulation. Real faith doesn't demand your blind obedience. It empowers you to seek, to grow, to stand on your own. Some people aren't preaching the gospel. They're selling a product. And that product is designed to keep you coming back, to keep you dependent, to keep you feeling like you need them more than you need God. They dangle promises in front of you, prosperity, blessings, miracles, but only if you follow their rules, only if you stay in their system, only if you do exactly what they say. And when things don't work out, they don't take responsibility. No, they blame you. They tell you your faith wasn't strong enough. They tell you you didn't give enough. They tell you you weren't obedient enough. And that's how they keep you running in circles, always chasing, never arriving. But listen, I need you to hear me. Faith was never meant to be a business. Worship was never meant to be a transaction, and salvation was never meant to be something that could be bought and sold. If the focus is more on the money than the message, more on the brand than the belief, more on the leader than the Lord, then you need to ask yourself, is this really about God or is this about power? You've got to wake up. You've got to stop letting people play with your soul like it's a game. If something doesn't feel right, if something seems off, if you feel like you're being controlled instead of being led, trust that feeling, question it, challenge it, because real faith gives you power, not takes it away. Real faith makes you stronger, not weaker. And real faith will never require you to worship anything or anyone other than the truth itself. Too many people are showing up every week, dressed up, hands raised, voices loud, but inside they're empty. Inside, they're starving. Inside, they're desperate for something real. And the sad part is they don't even realize it because they've been conditioned to believe that as long as the music is good, as long as the preacher is charismatic, as long as the service moves them emotionally, then everything must be right. But listen to me. Emotion is not transformation. Excitement is not elevation. Feeling something is not the same as being changed. People are being entertained instead of being empowered. They're getting a performance instead of a purpose. And that's why so many leave the same way they came. Broken, confused, struggling, but smiling on the outside because they think this is what faith looks like. But real faith isn't about a show. It's not about how loud the choir sings. It's not about how well the preacher can move a crowd. It's about whether or not your life is being transformed. It's about whether or not you becoming stronger, wiser, bolder. It's about whether or not you walking out of that place with something real, something that challenges you, something that stretches you, something that makes you better. But too many are just going through the motions. They show up, they listen, they leave, and nothing changes because the focus isn't on truth. The focus is on keeping people engaged, not enlightened. The focus is on keeping people entertained, not empowered. The focus is on making sure people feel good enough to come back next week, but not challenged enough to actually grow. And that's the problem. Because the spirit of truth doesn't just make you feel good, it makes you uncomfortable. It convicts you. It forces you to confront yourself. It doesn't just inspire you for an hour on Sunday, it transforms your entire life. So ask yourself, are you just attending or are you transforming? Are you just listening or are you learning? Are you just feeling something or are you becoming something? Because faith is not about staying the same and calling it salvation. Faith is about stepping into something greater, something deeper, something real. And if the place you're in isn't leading you to that, if it's only giving you a moment of excitement but not a lifetime of change, then you have to start asking, is this really about God or is this just another distraction dressed up as the truth? Too many people are walking through life with their eyes closed, trusting blindly, following without question, believing everything they hear just because it's coming from a pulpit. And that's exactly why thousands are being deceived. Because when you stop thinking for yourself, when you stop asking questions, when you stop seeking truth on your own, you become easy to control. You become easy to manipulate. You become exactly what they want, obedient, loyal, and unaware. They count on you never questioning. They count on you just accepting. They count on you believing that because they wear the title of pastor, bishop, or prophet, they must be speaking truth. But let me tell you something. Titles don't mean truth. A position doesn't mean power. And just because someone knows how to quote scripture doesn't mean they're living by it. Too many people are mistaking authority for authenticity. They're mistaking charisma for calling. They're mistaking a loud voice for a true message. And that's why so many are being led down the wrong path without even realizing it. You have to wake up. You have to start thinking. You have to stop letting people spoon feed you their version of truth without ever checking it for yourself. Because the moment you stop questioning, the moment you stop searching, the moment you stop testing what you hear against what you know is real, that's the moment you put your soul in someone else's hands. And not everyone who stands behind a pulpit has your best interests at heart. Some are there for power. Some are there for profit. Some are there because they love the control. And the easiest way to control people is to make them think they don't need to think for themselves. Faith was never meant to be blind. Faith doesn't mean you don't ask questions. Faith doesn't mean you don't seek understanding. Real faith pushes you to go deeper, to search for truth, to know for yourself, instead of just relying on what someone else tells you. Because if your faith is built only on what another person says, then what happens when that person falls? What happens when that person is exposed? What happens when you realize they were never leading you to God, only leading you to them? You have a responsibility to protect your faith. You have a responsibility to guard your soul. Stop trusting blindly. Stop following without thinking. Start seeking truth for yourself. Because real truth doesn't mind questions. Real truth doesn't fear examination. And real truth, it will always stand no matter how many lies try to cover it up. Faith is not a building. Faith is not a brand. Faith is not a man standing on a stage telling you what to believe. Faith is something real, something alive, something that cannot be contained within four walls or controlled by human hands. But too many people have traded their personal connection with God for a routine. Too many people have handed over their faith to an institution thinking that if they just show up, if they just sit in a pew, if they just do what they're told, then they must be on the right path. But listen to me. That's not faith. That's conditioning. That's routine. That's religion without relationship. People are being deceived into thinking that God only moves inside a building, that truth can only be found in a service, that their salvation is tied to a specific place or a specific leader. And that's exactly how deception works. It makes you believe that without them, without their system, without their approval, you have nothing. But let me tell you something. Your faith is bigger than any church. Your relationship with God is not dependent on any preacher. And the truth is not locked inside one organization, one denomination, one way of doing things. Look at history. How many times have powerful religious institutions claimed to have the only truth, only for people to later realize they were being manipulated? How many times have people put their full trust in a leader, only for that leader to be exposed for lies, corruption, and greed? But here's the thing. The truth never changes. God never changes. The only thing that changes is the illusion people create to keep you under their control. And as long as you believe that faith is something that has to be given to you by another person, you will always be vulnerable to deception. You have to wake up. You have to stop thinking that just because a place looks holy, just because a leader sounds convincing, just because the experience feels powerful, that it must be the only way to God. Faith is not something you attend. It's something you live. It's not just something you hear. It's something you do. And if you only feel connected to God when you're inside a building, then maybe what you're experiencing isn't faith. It's just habit. Real faith cannot be contained. It cannot be controlled. It cannot be bought or sold. Real faith is about transformation, about connection, about truth that goes beyond any human structure. So don't put your trust in a building. Don't put your faith in a brand. And don't ever let anyone tell you that the only way to reach God is through them. Because the truth is, if someone is trying to control your access to faith, then they were never leading you to God in the first place. They were only leading you to themselves. Open your eyes, pay attention, because the biggest weapon deception has is ignorance. The moment you stop looking, the moment you stop questioning, the moment you just go along with whatever you're told, that's the moment you become easy to manipulate. That's the moment you stop being a seeker and start being a follower. And the problem is, too many people are following the wrong thing. Too many people are mistaking routine for relationship, mistaking noise for knowledge, mistaking leadership for lordship. And that's why thousands are being deceived. You cannot afford to just take someone's word for it. You cannot afford to believe something just because it sounds good, just because it feels right, just because it's coming from a stage with lights and music and emotion. Because deception doesn't come looking like deception, it comes looking like truth. And the only way to tell the difference is to seek truth for yourself. Stop relying on someone else's version of God. Stop expecting someone else to do the work for you. Stop assuming that just because a person holds a Bible, that means they holding the truth. Not everyone in a pulpit is there to save you. Some are there to control you. Some are there to build their own kingdom, not God's kingdom. And they count on you not paying attention. They count on you being too busy, too tired, too distracted to ask questions. They count on you being so desperate for direction that you'll accept anything they say without ever testing it for yourself. And that's how deception spreads, not because it's powerful, but because people stop looking for the truth on their own. You have to take responsibility for your own faith. You have to take responsibility for your own understanding, because at the end of the day, you are the one who has to live with the choices you make, the beliefs you follow, the path you walk. And if you let someone else dictate that for you without ever thinking, without ever questioning, without ever searching, then one day you'll wake up and realize you've spent your whole life believing a lie. Real truth does not fear questions. Real truth does not need to manipulate. Real truth does not require blind loyalty. If something is real, it will stand no matter how much it is tested. But if something falls apart the moment you start asking questions, then maybe it was never truth in the first place. So don't just accept, don't just follow, don't just believe because it's what you've always been told. Open your eyes, seek for yourself, because the truth is out there, but only those who are willing to look will ever find it. The truth will always demand something from you. It will stretch you. It will challenge you. It will make you uncomfortable, because real transformation isn't easy. It's not convenient. It's not something you just hear once a week and suddenly become better. No, real transformation requires effort, commitment, and discipline. But too many churches today aren't teaching transformation. They're teaching comfort. They're teaching people to show up, listen, feel good, and go home the exact same way they came. And that's why thousands are being deceived. If your faith isn't changing you, if it isn't pushing you to be better, if it isn't forcing you to confront your weaknesses and grow from them, then what are you really doing? Because faith is not just about feeling good. It's about becoming something greater. It's about stepping into your purpose, walking in truth, and refusing to stay the same. But instead of preaching growth, too many places are preaching convenience. They want to keep you coming back, so they tell you what you want to hear instead of what you need to hear. They make you feel good about staying the same instead of pushing you to rise higher. Look around. There are too many people sitting in church every week, shouting, clapping, and praising, but still living in the same cycles of pain, struggle, and confusion. Why? Because they were never taught how to break free. They were never given the tools to change. They were only given just enough inspiration to survive another week, but never enough truth to actually thrive. And that's not what faith is about. That's not what transformation looks like. The churches that are truly walking in truth will not leave you the same. They will not just entertain you. They will equip you. They will challenge you. They will call you out when you need it, because real growth isn't comfortable. Real change isn't easy, but it's necessary. And if the place you're in isn't pushing you to become better, then maybe it's not about faith at all. Maybe it's just about keeping you where you are, keeping you dependent, keeping you comfortable enough to stay, but not uncomfortable enough to grow. Listen, faith isn't about sitting still. It's about movement. It's about progression. It's about stepping out of the old version of yourself and walking into the person you were meant to be. And if you're not being pushed, if you're not being challenged, if you're not being transformed, then you have to ask yourself, is this really faith? Or is this just another place that keeps me entertained while I stay the same? Because the truth will shake you, it will wake you up, and it will push you forward. And that's exactly why so many churches avoid preaching it. Because if people truly transform, they wouldn't need to rely on them anymore. And that's a level of freedom they don't want you to have. Faith is not about fear. Faith is not about guilt. Faith is not about control. But too many places have turned faith into a weapon, using fear to keep people in line, using guilt to manipulate, using control to keep people from thinking for themselves. And that's why thousands are being deceived, because instead of being taught to walk in love, in strength, in confidence, they're being taught to walk in fear, fear of questioning, fear of thinking differently, fear of stepping outside of what they've been told. That's not faith, that's bondage. That's slavery disguised as salvation. Because real faith doesn't hold you back, it sets you free. Real faith doesn't make you afraid to think, it gives you the power to seek truth. But some churches, They want you to think for yourself. They don't want you to question anything, but they don't want you to step outside of the box they've put you in. Because if you do, you might realize that everything they told you wasn't the whole truth. You might realize that you don't need them to have a relationship with God. You might realize that faith was never meant to be controlled by man in the first place. They tell you if you don't follow their rules, you're doomed. If you don't listen to them, you're lost. If you don't obey them, you'll suffer. But that's not God. That's manipulation. That's fear-based control disguised as faith. And that's why so many people stay stuck. That's why so many people live their lives scared to question, scared to grow, scared to walk away from what doesn't feel right, because they've been conditioned to believe that stepping outside of their system means stepping outside of God's grace. But hear me, God is bigger than any building, any pastor, any set of man-made rules. God is not in the business of keeping you in fear. God is not in the business of keeping you small. God is in the business of setting people free. And if your faith is based on fear instead of freedom, then you need to ask yourself, what am I really following? Am I following the truth or am I following control? The truth will never keep you afraid. The truth will never tell you that questioning is wrong. The truth will never manipulate you into obedience, because real faith isn't about fear. It's about power. It's about confidence. It's about walking boldly in your purpose without needing anyone else to validate you. And once you realize that, once you step into that kind of faith, no man can ever control you again. And that's exactly why they don't want you to know it. Because a free mind, a free spirit, a person walking in truth, that's a person they can't deceive. At the end of the day, the truth will always reveal itself. No matter how many lies are told, no matter how many people are deceived, no matter how long manipulation has been in place, truth always wins. But here's the thing, truth isn't just something you hear, something you know. It's something you have to choose. And that's the part most people miss. Because choosing truth means taking responsibility. It means unlearning years of conditioning. It means stepping away from the comfortable lie and stepping into the uncomfortable reality that not everything you've been taught was right. And that's hard. That's painful. That's why so many people would rather stay blind. It's easier to keep following the crowd than to stand alone. It's easier to keep pretending than to admit you've been misled. It's easier to go with what you've always known than to have to tear it all down and start again. But listen to me. That's exactly why so many people stay stuck. That's exactly why so many churches get away with deception, because people don't want to face the truth when the lie is more comfortable. People don't want to admit that maybe, just maybe, they put their trust in the wrong place. But hear me, just because you were deceived doesn't mean you have to stay deceived. Just because you were misled doesn't mean you have to keep walking in the wrong direction. Truth isn't about what's easy, it's about what's right. And once you see it, once you know it, you have a choice to make. Do you ignore it and keep living the way you always have? Or do you step into the unknown, step into something real, something deeper, something that actually sets you free? Because that's what truth does. It doesn't just expose lies, it liberates you. It breaks chains. It wakes you up. And yes, waking up is hard. Yes, it's painful. Yes, it will cost you. But what's the alternative? Living in deception, spending your life in a system that was never designed to help you grow, only to keep you controlled? At some point, you have to decide, do I want to be comfortable or do I want to be free? Do I want to follow the crowd or do I want to follow truth? Because the real ones, the ones who truly seek truth, the ones who are willing to let go of deception even when it hurts, those are the ones who find something real. And when you find real truth, when you step into real faith, when you finally break free from the lies that have kept you bound, that's when you truly start living. That's when you start surviving and start thriving. That's when you step into the life you were actually created for. But it all starts with a choice. Truth or deception, freedom or control, growth or comfort. And at the end of the day, nobody can make that choice for you. You have to decide for yourself because the truth is right there. The question is, are you willing to see it? Enough is enough. The time for being blind, for being controlled, for being fed half-truths and watered down faith, it's over. You were not created to live in deception. You were not created to walk through life blindly following systems that were designed to keep you small. You were created for truth. You were created for purpose. You were created to have a real connection with God, not through a middleman, not through a brand, not through a system that only benefits those at the top. And it's time to wake up to that truth For too long, people have been led by fear instead of faith. For too long, people have mistaken routine for relationship. For too long, people have put their trust in a building instead of the one who created them. But today, that ends. Today, you take back your power. Today, you start thinking for yourself. Today, you start asking the hard questions, the ones they never wanted you to ask. Because a questioning mind is a dangerous mind. A free thinker is someone they can't control. And that's exactly what you were meant to be, free. You don't need permission to seek truth. You don't need approval to walk in your purpose. And you don't need anyone to validate your relationship with God. Because faith was never meant to be controlled by men. Faith was never meant to be a business. Faith was never meant to be something that only a select few had the right to interpret. And if you've been stuck in a system that made you feel like you had to earn your way to God, like you had to follow their rules to be accepted, like you had to keep quiet and never question, then understand that wasn't faith. That was control. But now the choice is yours. Now you decide. Do you keep walking the same path? Keep following the same voices? Keep believing the same things without ever testing them? Or do you choose to seek something real? Because the truth is, deception only works on those who refuse to wake up. But once you wake up, once you see things for what they are, once you start thinking for yourself, they can't control you anymore. So walk in truth, stand in truth, live in truth, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it means standing alone. Because truth will always be worth it. Freedom will always be worth it. And the life you were meant to live, the one outside of deception, outside of control, outside of systems that keep you small, that life is waiting for you. The only question is, are you ready to step into it?